The man who records my name does not look at my face. Lord Sereth Mornvale stands at a writing table near the gate passage, dressed in charcoal layers that make him look assembled rather than clothed. He reads from a document, and a subordinate scratches something into a ledger, and neither of them speaks to me directly. One speaks about me in the clipped vocabulary of transaction: debt-settled transfer, unskilled labour, no dependent claims, no guild standing. The subordinate repeats it back. Sereth nods once and returns to his document. That is the whole of my arrival. I am given undyed linen, 2 sets, and told to leave everything else in a wooden box near the gatehouse wall. The box has no lock. I understand this is intentional. I fold my mother's scarf on top before the lid closes, and I do not watch them carry it away. The fortress is cold in a way that has nothing to do with temperature. Dreadhollow Bastion is built from a single conviction, that weight is the same as permanence. Every corridor is wide enough for soldiers in formation and lit poorly enough that detail becomes suggestion. The ceilings press, the floors absorb sound. Within an hour I stop expecting an echo. My first 3 days are water hauling, ash clearance, floor scrubbing. My hands are already ruined from worse. I learn the staff by what they do when someone of rank passes. The eyes dropped, the shoulders drawn inward, the breath held until the presence moves on. It is not theatre. It is involuntary. I watch a senior housekeeper's hands tremble around her keys after a mid-rank wolf passes without acknowledging her, and I understand I've arrived somewhere that hierarchy is not a social arrangement. It lives in the body. It acts on the body. No one names the West Wing directly. They indicate it by omission, by the particular quiet that falls when someone's gaze drifts too far down the northern corridor. That way, their silence says. Not that way. At night, from somewhere inside the stone, I hear something impact a wall. Then again, then silence. I add it to the list of things I do not ask about. The envoy is from the southern coast. I know this because he says so 3 times before the midday meal is cleared, and because he wears it the way men wear borrowed authority, loudly, in case someone forgets. He drops something on the floor while I am serving. A cup, deliberately. I watch it happen. His eyes are on me when he does it, the particular look of a man testing the shape of something before he puts his weight on it. The others in the room have already moved to their knees. I am still upright when Lord Sereth Mornvale enters from the far door. I do not kneel quickly enough. And when the envoy's comment follows me out of the room, something about the quality of what the northern packs import these days. I do not keep my face as empty as I should. I do not say anything. I do not have to. My expression does it without my permission. Sereth sends for me an hour later. His office is warmer than the rest of the bastion, which somehow makes it worse. He does not look up from his papers immediately, which is its own kind of statement. "You are being reassigned," Sereth says. No preamble, no anger. "West Wing, outer chamber, cleaning and maintenance. You begin at first light." He says it the way he might note a change in weather. I watch his pen continue moving across the page. "Yes, my lord," I say. That is all. The other workers here by evening. A kitchen girl grabs my wrist in the corridor, her grip too tight for the message she is trying to make gentle. "Don't go in the inner room," she says. "Don't touch anything that looks like it was thrown. Don't make sound." She releases me before I can respond. The West Wing corridor changes the air. I feel it before I see anything. A pressure that settles across the back of my neck and pushes, slowly, toward the floor. Like standing at depth. Like something very large is already aware of me. The outer chamber is a record of accumulated force. A stone wall bracket has been removed from its housing. Not pulled, but crushed at the joint. A heavy table lies on its side, 2 legs sheared clean. The floor along the far wall carries long parallel marks that I initially take for tool scoring until I count them and understand they are not. I begin to clean what can be cleaned. I set aside what cannot. The door to the inner room is not fully closed. I am aware of this the entire time I work. I do not look directly at it until a sound. Not loud, more like pressure release, draws my eyes up. Vailcor stands in the gap. Shadow and outline mostly. Enormous stillness where I expect motion. Golden eyes catching what little light the corridor holds, and holding it. The dominance coming off him is not a metaphor. My lungs remember how to work only because I give them specific instructions. Myron looks at the sheared table legs, at the claw marks, at the bracket torn from solid stone. "You'll need a new one," I say. My voice comes out flat. I do not plan this. The silence afterward is absolute. Vilecore doesn't move, doesn't speak. But the pressure in the room, the dense, airless weight of it, shifts by some fraction I cannot name. Not less. Just different. I pick up the broken bracket and add it to the pile. The routine begins without anyone deciding it should. Marin leaves the tray 2 steps inside the outer chamber. Not at the door, that feels like offering. 2 steps in, set down with a minimum of sound, and then she retreats to the far wall where the linen shelves require sorting. She does not watch the gap in the inner door. She sorts, she counts, she folds. On the 4th day, the food is partially eaten. She does not remark on this. She takes the tray, replaces it the next morning, and returns to the linen shelf. But something in her chest settles, the way a joint does when it finally finds its socket. The door, when it opens only to 3 inches, never wider, never less. The gap holds at exactly that measurement with a consistency that could only be deliberate, as if Vilecore has calculated what he can risk and drawn a line at it in his own flesh. Through it, darkness, the particular quality of air that has been occupied by something large and warm for a long time, and occasionally the dim amber of his eyes. Myron speaks to the gap the way she'd speak to a wall that had recently proven. It listens. "There are 6 brackets in the stores," she says one morning, not looking up from the inventory list. "I've put 4 toward the east side where the stone's compromised. The last 2 I'll leave here unless you need them elsewhere." 3 inches of silence. "I'll leave them here." She doesn't know when she stops feeling afraid and starts feeling something more difficult to name. Curious, maybe. Attentive in a way that requires more of her than fear did. The blanket appears on a Wednesday, or what she estimates is Wednesday. She has stopped tracking the days by name. It is folded on the low bench where she habitually pauses to sort the heavy linen, and it is folded well, which means it was not folded quickly. She stands looking at it for a moment before she picks it up and wraps it around her shoulders. She does not say, "Thank you." She doesn't think that's what it was asking for. A week later, Marin comes back from the outer yard after clearing ice from the supply drain. She's soaked through her boots, her feet 2 blocks of cold. When she returns to the outer chamber, there are dry socks on the bench, thick ones, the kind the senior staff don't merit. She sits on the floor and changes them without ceremony. The dark flower appears last, a single dried sprig of something Marin has no name for, left on the inner sill at exactly the height her eyes would catch it when she passed. She doesn't pick it up. She leaves it there, where it becomes, in some way she can't fully articulate, a kind of landmark. The lower staff have begun remarking on the quiet. "The West Wing's been still this past fortnight," one says to another, without explanation or particular surprise. As if stillness, once it arrives, requires no accounting for. Marin says nothing. She folds the linen. She counts the brackets. She returns every morning to 3 inches of open air, and for the first time in longer than she can accurately remember, she does not feel entirely unwitnessed. The 21st hour finds Marin in the scullery corridor carrying weight she stopped feeling somewhere around the 16th. Her hands have gone past ache into a dull electrical absence. The torches blur when she doesn't focus. She doesn't remember making the decision to go to the West Wing. She is simply there the way water finds a low place, not by choice but by the accumulated pressure of everything behind it. The outer chamber receives her without the usual compression of dread. The air is heavy, always heavy here, but tonight it seems to part around her rather than press inward. She sets down nothing. She has brought nothing. She realizes distantly that she forgot the tray. The thought comes and goes without consequence. Her back meets the wall beside the shelving, and she does not intend to stay there, but staying becomes the only available option. Her legs have been making a quiet argument for several hours, and they have finally won. She slides. The floor is cold granite. She registers it from far away. The inner door is 3 inches open, as always. The gap breathes. She watches it from a strange sideways angle and thinks, with the fractured logic of the genuinely exhausted, that she should stand. She should stand, and she should leave, and she should... The thought doesn't complete. She wakes inside, not at the threshold, not in the outer chamber. The first thing Marin understands before her eyes fully open is warmth. Substantial, specific warmth, the kind that has shape and weight and comes from a source directly against her spine. The second thing she understands is that she is horizontal. The third thing takes longer. Vilecor's arm lies across her back, not restraining, resting with the full passive gravity of deep sleep. His hand is open at her ribs, fingers loose. She can feel his chest rising and falling against her shoulder blades in a rhythm so slow and even, it takes her several seconds to confirm. It is real. She has never heard anything breathe like that in this wing. She has heard impact and static, and the low structural groan of pressure with nowhere to go. She has not heard this. Merrin does not move. Her eyes adjust. The room around her is intact. The small table upright, the walls unscored, the single cup she once left just inside the door still standing where she placed it a week ago. No blood, no damage, no evidence of what this room typically costs the night. She is alive. She is incomprehensibly warm. Vilecor does not stir. His breathing continues its long, undisturbed measure, the breathing of a man who has not been reached by whatever chases him. Not tonight, not with her weight pressed against him like an accidental answer to a question he never learned to ask. Merrin stares at the far wall and understands, with the clarity that only comes when the body is too depleted for denial, that something has already changed. She did not decide this. It decided itself. The guards find Merrin before she finds herself. She's still standing in the outer chamber doorway, hands loose at her sides, when the first one rounds the corridor bend and stops hard at the sight of her. Upright, unbloodied, emerging from a wing of the bastion that has not returned anyone whole in longer than most of them have served here. He stares. His hand goes to the hilt at his hip, not in threat but in reflex, the way a body reaches for something solid when the ground shifts. Two more come behind him. Then a physician, summoned by someone who must have been watching the corridor all night. Merrin does not explain herself. There is nothing to explain that her continued existence does not already say. The physician pushes past the guards. He enters the outer chamber without quite understanding that he is doing it, drawn by professional compulsion toward the inner door. Still 3 inches open, still the same 3 inches. And what he hears from behind it stops him where he stands. She watches his face change. He's listening to Vilecor breathe, long, even, undisturbed. The physician has the expression of a man whose entire framework for a situation has just been quietly dismantled. Word moves through Dreadhollow Bastion the way cold moves, not announced but felt. By the time Merrin is walked to new quarters on a higher floor, corridors that would normally hold their usual traffic have gone still. People look without looking. She recognizes the calculation in their eyes because she has spent her entire life being assessed, and she knows the difference between curiosity and inventory. The new room is twice the size of her previous one. There is a wash basin with warm water already poured, clean clothing, undyed but better weight than the linen she arrived in, a meal on a small table that has not been assembled from whatever survived the communal serving. Merrin washes her face and eats and does not mistake any of it for kindness. Lord Sereth Mornvale receives her in a council antechamber before midday. He is seated when she enters, precise, silver-threaded, already composed in the way of someone who composed himself long before she was sent for. He does not keep her standing for effect. He gestures to the chair across from him immediately, which she understands is its own kind of message. "You are no longer categorized as general labor," Sereth says. His voice is even, unhurried. "Your proximity to the Alpha has been identified as functionally significant to his stability. You will be reclassified as restricted household asset, attached specifically to the management of his condition. Your needs will be met. Your movements will be supervised." Merrin looks at him. "This arrangement protects you," he adds. Not unkindly. There it is. She feels it settle around her like a fitted thing. Comfort built to exact tolerances, each amenity a bar. Each bar placed with care so the structure holds without appearing to be one. Sereth is watching her with those pale, attentive eyes. Merrin keeps her face still and says nothing because she has learned that nothing is sometimes the only possession left. The escort stops at the outer chamber door. There are 2 of them now. Councilmen, not household staff. And they wait outside in the corridor with the specific stillness of people paid to notice everything. Merrin feels their attention like a second skin pulled tight over the first. She steps inside. alone. The chamber is unchanged. The replaced bracket sits in the wall where she set it. The folded blanket is still on the bench where she left it that morning. The dried flower long since crumbled to a stain of dark colour at its stem. Everything is where it should be. Everything feels wrong. The inner door stands at its 3 inches. Marin doesn't stop at the threshold. She has delivered trays here, spoken through the gap, learned the particular grammar of reduced contact. She knows what Serath has made of that grammar now. He has translated it into policy, into schedule, into ownership dressed as care. She knows what she is inside the arrangement he has built. She pushes the door open and walks through. The pressure arrives immediately. A dense, low weight against her chest and the crown of her head. The air in the inner chamber several degrees colder and several times heavier than the corridor. Vilecore is standing at the far side of the room, not moving, his back partly turned. He's aware of her. She can tell by the particular quality of his stillness, the kind that comes from discipline rather than absence. He turns. In the low light, his eyes find hers. The amber in them has gone very still. Not the overflow she has seen fragments of in the damage around him, but the place underneath it. The place that is still, quietly, a man. Marin stops a few feet inside the door. "They've scheduled me," she says. Her voice comes out flat, accurate. "Twice daily, supervised until I'm no longer useful to the Council's management problem. I didn't think you should believe it was still my choice without knowing that." Vilecore says nothing. She watches the tension in his jaw, the controlled measure of his breathing. She watches him take up the words she's given him and hold them, not dismissing them, not excusing what surrounds them. The room doesn't crack. The walls hold. She watches him choose. The sound when it comes is rough with disuse, abraded at every edge, the sound of something that has not been spoken in months ground back through a human throat. One syllable. His eyes do not leave hers. Stay. Not to the room. Not to the role Serath has dressed her in. The word lands without authority behind it, without command infrastructure, without any architecture of power at all. It is the first thing in her entire life that is asked. Marin stands inside the weight of the room and feels her own breathing settle, not into calm, not into comfort, but into something harder and more durable than either. Shah stays.